I would like to say something right off the bat, and that is this. I'm going to do a lot of crying. But it's not because I'm sad at all. It's because the goodness of the Lord is why I'm crying. They are happy tears. It's a horrible story, but such a wonderful outcome, such a wonderful outcome. I'm going to just say a little bit about myself and my addiction. And my addiction has been prescription drugs. So here we go. I was born in May of 1952, and I was one of 7 children. I was the middle child. 1 sister and 2 brothers older, and 1 sister and 2 brothers younger than me. All my life, I have heard that large families are wonderful, and they are if you are close to each other. That was not the case in my family. From a young age, I experienced verbal, mental, and physical abuse from my father. My mother, as well as my siblings, suffered this same abuse. Many times, I saw my father slap my mother down for no reason. We never knew when his wrath would rain down on any of us. But needless to say, there was a lot of fear and anxiety in the home. Some of the best times I remember were actually when my dad would stay gone for days at a time. There was a peace when he was away, and I cherished those times. Discipline for me and my brothers and sisters was being taken to a small room and beaten with a leather strap. Many times, my back and legs would have open wounds from the beatings. I can remember one time I was in high school, and I was in PE class, and my PE teacher saw these places on my back and legs, and she asked me what had happened. So I told her. Well, she confronted my father about this, but all it achieved was just another beating for me. Fear was my constant companion. I started having horrible panic attacks when I was in 7th grade. I didn't understand at the time what was happening. I just knew I was terrified for no reason. These attacks became part of my everyday life. I graduated from high school in 1970, and shortly thereafter, my mother became extremely ill. She digressed from walking to a wheelchair, then to a hospital bed the rest of her time on this earth. She needed total care, so I stayed home and I took care of her, and I was glad to do so. In 1973, I met the love of my life. It was Bud Cole. We were married the following year, and just recently, we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. Yes. On January the 25th, 1976, sorry, I'm telling your age. our daughter Heather was born. She was the most beautiful baby ever. And as you were, she was. And she was perfect in every way. Heather is our pride and joy. When Heather was in the 7th grade, I took her to our doctor for a physical. And it was here that I talked to the doctor about my panic attacks. That day, he wrote me a prescription for Xanax. I took them as prescribed at first, and they really seemed to help the anxiety and the panic attacks. Well, after taking Xanax for 2 years, I started taking more than was prescribed. And I also started taking hydrocodone along with the Xanax. And this went on until Heather's freshman year in college. At this time, I lost my job because of my addiction. And I went to drug rehab for the first time for 6 weeks. And I did well for a few years, then relapsed, started using again. My relationships with Bud and Heather really suffered during all this time. I hurt them badly. I made them angry. I embarrassed them and just put them through a ton of hurt. They handled things quite differently. Heather just pulled away from me. She really didn't like me very much at all. Bud hated the addiction, but he never hated me. He never stopped loving me. He loved me through every bit of it. He knew the pain I was in, I think. And honestly, Bud Cole has shown me the love of Jesus more than any other individual on this earth. Fast forward, I'm leaving out a few years there, but it was all taking drugs intermittently. But fast forward to the last few years, I began having sleeping problems, getting little to no sleep each night. My doctor put me on a sleeping pill that really helped me at first. Well, when they quit working as well, I started again taking more than was prescribed, and the rest is history. My life was once again unmanageable, and I needed help. At this point, I went to Women of Hope in Jackson. I was there 6 months, and when I left, I honestly thought I would never use drugs again. I was so wrong. In January of 2021, I relapsed again and went back to another drug rehab facility. I was there for 3 months, and it was here that I knew I had to do something. I just had to. With God's help, I was not going to go back to another rehab. So when I returned home, I started Celebrate Recovery at Love and Truth. And I absolutely love the CR family so very much. And I think my husband even loves CR more than I do, if that's even possible. I mean, he sees that I am not the only crazy person out there, y'all. He does. And so, CR is exactly what we both needed. It's wonderful. Can't say enough good. Okay, along with CR, one of my best friends, Janice Ross, agreed to meet with me 1 hour each week to talk and pray. I did all the talking, and she did all the praying over my heart. And, you know, for the first time, I was totally honest with another individual, and it felt wonderful, absolutely wonderful. There were times, Janice, there you are. There were times when I absolutely begged her for advice, but it was to no avail. She showed no sympathy, none. She was like, you got yourself here, you get yourself out of this. But anyway, what this did, it pushed me to be totally dependent on the Lord. And we still meet, and we still talk, and she still prays over my heart, and she's still not giving me any advice. And she is my James 5:16 partner. That's who I go to. Like I say, just totally honest. I talk from my heart. And today, I have such a peace in my life that I have never had. Recently, my husband, who always has it together, says to me, I wish I had peace like you do. So all I could do was say, wow. You know, that's a huge deal. That is huge. One of my regrets, my biggest regret in my addiction, was putting my daughter in the position of not wanting me at her wedding. I was crushed at the time, but I really couldn't blame her. And she actually did the right thing. She really did. I think that was probably one of the first times that I realized my actions have consequences. And I have worked hard to earn back her love and respect as well as Bud's. And I can tell you tonight that God has restored that relationship. To better than it's ever been, ever. And my relationship with Bud is better than it's ever been. God is absolutely faithful, so faithful. And I just want to end this by saying thank you to all of my family and my dear friends. And a lot of you guys are here tonight. These friends have never left my side on this journey. They have been right there with me. They have stood by me through thick and thin. They have prayed for me. They have sat and listened to me cry, talk, whatever I need to do. And I will be forever grateful to them all. And I want to thank Love and Truth Church, Love and Truth CR, for all you do to speak life to hurting people. And a big thanks would go out to Christy Butler and Pastor Marcy at Women of Hope. They work diligently to help every addict. They work diligently to help every addict that comes through their doors. And I thank God for total restoration. I think that He has restored everything the enemy has tried to take from me. God has been so good to me, and I am humbled and grateful. And what God has done for me, He can do for anybody in this room. You just have to ask. And I'm just going to close with a favorite scripture. You all know it. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And He has done that for me and just so much more. I mean, I could just go on and on and on and on. But now I get to introduce you to my wonderful daughter, Heather Stephen.
That's my husband.
Matthew. I'm sorry, Heather Matthew. And she is going to tell you all the horrible part of the addiction. Because it's horrible. That God is good still. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be the worst comedy show you've ever been to. That's the truth. Because it ain't funny. But I hope that's not why you're here tonight. I'm sure it's not. Brother Couples, I haven't had the privilege of meeting you, but I hope that you still want to meet me when this is over with. I'm going to try not to defile your pulpit tonight. I just want to start by saying that I'm really grateful for CR and for this church, for everything it's done to my family, done for my family. And I'm not going to linger there because I already hear my voice quiver and I got a lot more to go. So I'm going to move on, but I'm very grateful. I'm here for two reasons. I'm here to support my mom tonight and to hopefully help somebody in the room. And I want everybody to know before I really get started that I'm really proud of my mom. Airing out your dirty laundry in front of people is hard. It's not hard for me because I get paid to do it for a living, but it's very hard for her and for most people. And it took a lot of guts and a lot of humility for her to get up here for the first time in 72 years. Sorry. And I also want you to know that this isn't very eloquent. I've never spoken about this publicly. I'm used to writing jokes, not telling my life story to people. So it's been hard to know how much to say, how much not to say. I'm not here to humiliate my family. I do love to embarrass my dad every now and then for shock value, but I'm not here to do that tonight. I'm trying to harness all that. Some things are for my mom to share when she's ready to do that. So I'm not here for any of that, but I am here to shed light on a different angle, what addiction has left me with, what I grew up in, and how I felt. I don't have any scriptures tonight, just some honest stories and things that I want to leave you with, so please have grace. I don't want to overshare, like I said, but I do think context is important. I think when you know where people have been, you're able to see how far they've come, and I think you feel less alone when you know somebody's been where you've been. So I've debated on whether or not to give you the Disney version or the Jerry Springer version tonight. I'm going to try to... Thank you for that. I'm going to try to hit somewhere in the middle. It definitely errs more on the side of Jerry Springer without the chair throwing, but I'm going to try to lock that down tonight. If you know, you know. But I want to just start with, I just want to back up a little bit and tell you that when I was really young, I have a lot of great memories. I had a great childhood. My parents were very present. My mom, I remember her baking cupcakes and bringing them to my kindergarten class. I remember my dad coaching my softball team, carving the pumpkin for my class at school. I remember my parents were really happy. They had a lot of friends, and they would come over to the house all the time, and they'd play cards. And I just remember an ease to life. We were in church 8 days a week, and I loved every minute of it. And things were great until my 7th grade year, like my mom said. And a lot of things started to change in our home. My mom became very distant. She became easily frustrated, easily angered. My parents argued a lot. I had never really seen that before. Just a lot of strange behavior coming from her that my dad nor myself really knew how to sort through. And I just felt like I didn't know her anymore. And that continued on. My grades started to drop. I was a straight A student. My grades started dropping. I just didn't care anymore. I was sort of carrying this weight of things that were going on in my home that I didn't even know what was going on in my home. It just felt really weighty. And finally, my senior year of high school, we found out in a very, actually financially devastating way about my mom's drug addiction. And I remember coming home from somewhere, and nobody was at home, so I went next door. I had the beautiful privilege of living next door to my grandparents my whole life. And I went next door, and my parents were there with the pastors of our church at the time. And I remember my grandmother and my pastor's wife saying, "We found out that your mom's been addicted to drugs, to prescription drugs. You just go on home and we'll sort it out." And so I went home by myself. And this would continue on for the next 30 plus years. It created a horribly dysfunctional family dynamic in our home. Listen, I want you to know too, I've witnessed my mom be in and out of rehabs, like she told you, my whole life. And we got a lot of stories. This isn't, you look at her and you're like, there's no way. There's no way. But there's a way. Okay, it happened. And a lot went on. So this wasn't just like your periodic, popping a pill. There's a lot underneath here. And once again, that's not for today, but I just want to kind of paint the picture for you that it was really tough. And it created this dynamic with me and my dad because, I was an only child and nobody really knew what we were going through but me and him. So we would talk about it. And I would end up, being the private investigator. I would end up, I became the fixer of the family. I would be the one to sit my mom down and have drug talks with her. We don't do drugs in this house. I would console my dad. I would kind of help him, like, hey, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna do this. We're gonna, do what we got to do. And it was a strange dynamic. It became very much like I felt like I was the mom, and that my mom was my daughter. And it's not how I wanted it, but I just felt this need to help and this need to be tough and be there for my dad. And that's what I did. I felt like, the drug addiction ebbed and flowed You know, she would be clean and then she wouldn't be. And whenever my dad would suspect that she was using again, he would talk to me about it. And he would be very angry. And those are the times when I got to also be angry. But then a few days later, because, you know, they had a different relationship. This was his wife. But I needed a mom, so it was different for me. And so a few days later, when he would be okay again, I wasn't okay. But there was no room for me to not be okay. I felt this expectation to just are you good? Because we just need you to be good because we got a lot going on over here. That's how I felt. I felt like there wasn't room for me to have emotion. And I felt like this was the hardest part for me in all of the years of this drug addiction. The hardest part for me was feeling like there's this expectation to pretend. Everybody knew, people, we lived in Milan, okay? People know what you're doing before you know what you're doing. But there was still this need, right? We just have to act like everything's good. And there was this need for me to, hey, we just need for you to, and I'm saying a lot of things. Listen, my dad was in survival mode. We were all in survival mode. I don't hold any of these things. I'm not bitter. I may sound like I'm not. I've worked through a lot of things. I'm not upset at him at all. This is just what happened. I felt like there was an expectation on me to just act like your mom, act like everything's good, act like y'all have a great relationship. Mother's Day, you better find that right card. You better not forget her birthday. And that weight suffocated me. And all I wanted was to be gone. I was very happy outside of my home, but in my home I was miserable. And I felt very alone. Not just because I was an only child. I also felt alone. I had an imaginary friend and that was helpful, but ultimately I felt alone. I became pretty independent. I mean, you know, I needed a little money every now and then like most kids, but I became independent. I went off to Bible college. I went to Brownsville School of Ministry. Married the first youth pastor I ran into. That didn't work out too well. Jumped from the frying pan into the fire. I went from one codependent family straight into my own new one, thinking I could fix somebody else, which doesn't work, by the way. So I had this codependent marriage I was in for 15 years until I couldn't take it anymore and thought I was going to lose my mind, and I left. But I had 2 beautiful kids. My daughter's here with me tonight, Ava. She's 17. I have a 21-year-old named Noah. Named him right out of Bible school, as you can tell. And during this time, you know, I had a relationship with my parents, but it was not good. Not for me. It was very pretend. I just acted like everything was fine when I could. Sometimes I couldn't hold it in, and I felt very punished. I felt a lot of guilt for needing my grandmother. Good grief. I'm sorry. I'm crying more than I did during my first marriage. God. Lord have mercy. Sorry, Ava. She knows it's okay. Anyway, fast forward to 2018. Things had been the same, ebbing and flowing, not great. And in 2018, thank you, appreciate that, so sweet. 2018, I had this random comedy career pop up, and so I went on the road for my first comedy tour, and I was on a bus for 4 months with a bunch of people I didn't know, and one of them was a production manager, really cute guy. He was really dark, tall, dark, and handsome. He's Indian. Tech support, not casino. He's a tech support Indian. Well, he is. I can say that. And we got to chatting, and I thought he was real cute. And then, I was 42 at the time, and he told me he had a lot of gray hair, but told me he was 29. And I thought, that's not good. That's not good, buddy. But your hair is very deceiving. And so I just thought, well, this isn't going to happen because, this age gap. But look at God. Won't he do it? And so this guy who never wanted to have kids, never wanted to get married, asked me if I would marry him. And I said, well, my son's always wanted a big brother. So, yeah, I think it could work out. So I said yes. And as we progress in our relationship, you're on the fast track when you're living in a bus for 4 months. You get to know each other pretty quickly. And I started realizing that I had a lot of things that I had not dealt with. Like big fear of abandonment. Like always afraid the other shoe's gonna drop. Because in my world, it always did. My private investigation work was top notch. And when I found things out, they were right. Mm-hmm. But that don't serve you too well when you're trying to get married. Sure don't, does it? It don't, girl. Sure don't. Sure don't. So, in 2019, I started going to therapy. And I learned a lot of things about myself. I was also second guessing myself a lot because I was kind of inadvertently taught, if you're in addiction, you've been around addiction, which I know a lot of you have, you're kind of gaslit a lot. You're like taught like, no, everything's fine. I'm not doing anything. Or no, you're seeing things. That didn't really happen. And so there's a lot of second guessing myself. And when I got into therapy, I really started to uncover these things. And what I found ultimately in therapy was that I mattered. And I had not really felt like I really mattered. I just felt like everybody around me needed me to be good. And I learned that it was okay to be mad, okay to be upset. I learned that it was okay to care about myself. And I learned that it was okay to forgive and hold a boundary. Both could be true. But I want to tell you something. I don't want to step on any toes. That's such a churchy thing to say, but I've been raised in church. I want you to know, I understand that not all churches are like this. I understand that people have good hearts and good intentions, and I know that this place is a safe place. I felt it when I walked in, and I hear it from all these people around me, and I know it's true. And you learn in therapy not to say but. You say and, because two opposing things can be true at the same time. It's the truth. And I was also inadvertently, subconsciously trained growing up that forgiveness means you take it. You take it all. You take everything that somebody is giving you and you just get low, and you get low, and you get lower until you lose yourself. Because if you don't, then you have unforgiveness in your heart and you don't love them. And that was so hard for me as a kid, even as an adult. I'm like, I love my mom. All I want is a mom. I didn't ask for this, yet I can't be mad. I can't be hurt. I can't be angry. If I don't take it, that means I'm not forgiving. And that is false. I almost said BS, but I thought that wouldn't be okay. Is that okay? That's BS. Total BS. Somebody's leaving. I already made somebody mad, but it's okay. When I was growing up, everything was about my mom because my mom had this need, right? She was struggling. And she did need. She needed all the people around her. She needed my dad. There were times I wanted him to leave her, and he wouldn't. Now I'm glad. She needed him. She needs him. She needed everybody around her. She needed me. I didn't handle myself well. I didn't know how. I did not know how. But here's the thing. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's just true. So all of this attention is going to my mom. And I just felt pretty lost. And I can count on one hand how many women asked me if I was okay. One of them was my grandmother. Thank God for her. I might be on drugs myself if I hadn't been raised next door to her. And the other woman was the mom of a boy that I dated when I was about 20 years old. I had a beautiful connection with her. And she loved me. She did not judge me. She did not judge my family. But she made sure that I was okay. And she still makes sure that I'm okay. She has stayed connected with me for 30 years. She's here tonight. Doreen Jones, I love you wherever you are. I don't blame anybody. I'm not mad at anybody. Please, mom's friends, you don't have to come apologize to me. I'm not angry at you. I know why you did what you did. And I know that when there's a kid involved, maybe people think they're overstepping. It's not their place. Let me tell you something. Please don't forget about the little people. And let's please stop making people feel wrong for having responses to their hurt. That ain't okay. I have felt wrong my whole life for having feelings based around something that was done to me. I had no hand in it. I didn't want it, but I felt so pushed down for having those feelings. Fast forward a little bit to 2020. I was still in therapy. My mom was in rehab at the time, and I was planning a wedding, and she was going to be out just a few weeks before my wedding. And it is not the dream of a little girl to grow up and marry the love of her life, who I am married to, and her mom not be there. That is not a dream. That is not a happy place for a girl to be. But I felt like I could not honor my husband or my wedding day if I had my mom there, because there have been so many events in my life where I was so focused on her, so worried about her. Is she okay? Is she wanting to do drugs? Does she have anxiety? Is she upset because I'm not paying enough attention to her? Where is she? And I just could not do it. I had done it my whole life. And I just didn't want to do it on that one day. And with a lot of prayer, a lot of tears, and a lot of therapy, I made the hard choice to not have her at my wedding. And I told my dad, and my dad chose not to come because of that. And that just about devastated me. And that is when I hit a really big crossroads. I was 42 years old. 42, really starting to deal. And I hit a place where I just said, I can't do it anymore. I cannot play the role I'm playing in this family. It is not serving me. I am suffocating under all this pressure. I am struggling. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And so I told my dad, I said, I can't I can't talk to Mom for a while. I just can't do it. When I'm ready, I'll let you know. And these are some things I need from you, Dad. And if you can't do these for me, for my heart, then I'm going to have to step away from you too. And he was not at a place where he could. And that's okay. I don't blame him for that. But I did not talk to my mom for 3 years. And I didn't talk to my dad for 2. And it was the saddest but most peaceful time of my life. It was. Because both can be true. I didn't enjoy that, but it also brought me peace because of everything we had dealt with. It's hard to know what to do. The Bible doesn't really spell it out. What do you do when your mom is addicted to drugs? We can read between the lines, but in that moment, I had to say to myself, what is the character of God? What does God say about me? And I had to get square with God, me and him. And so I did. But I had a lot of comments from a lot of people, a lot of family, a lot of well-intended, good-hearted people. You're dishonoring your mother. I'm like, no, I have dishonored my mother. Trust that. But this I've got to do for me. No, shame on you. You ought to be ashamed. You ought to be ashamed. You're dishonoring your mother. And I hate to see you do that because the Bible says you'll live a long life if you'll honor her. I'm like, you telling me I'm going to die? Is that what I'm hearing? And that's basically what I heard. I had to be real solid in my heart, me and the Lord. I'm not saying I did it all right. I'm not saying that. But I did all I knew to do in the moment, and that's okay sometimes. We just do all we can do. My dad did the best he could do. My mom did the best she could do. Maybe not all the time, but she did sometimes. She did. So in Christmas of 2022, we were having a family get-together, and my parents were invited. I was not excited about it. But I was like, okay, Heather, be a big girl. Do it for your kids. Show them you can do it. So I was planning to go to this family function, and the night before, I looked at my husband and I said, I think I'm going to bake my parents a cake. And he's like, a cake? Do tell. I was like, well, I don't have anything to offer them, really, but I just want to take it as a peace offering just so they know I don't hate them. Like, I don't hate you. I love you. I just needed space. I need space. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm not mad at you. I'm not angry at you. I've been doing a lot of work on myself. So I took them this cake and said, hi, I baked you a cake. It's such a lame thing that happened. And this cracked the door for conversation. My dad started talking. He's just happy to have a convo with me, just small talking and telling me about the lake and all the fish he's catching, and we just caught up and it was good. And then my mom got me off by myself, and I swore I wasn't going to let that happen, but here we go. And so we're off in a little corner by the front door, and she starts telling me about how these past few years have been hard for her. And this probably wasn't the right thing to do, but I said, Mom, I got to stop you right there. I can't worry about that. I have worried about you my whole life, and I need you to worry about me for a minute because I'm still just your kid. I literally felt like a teenager in that moment. I felt like I was back in 7th grade, and sometimes I still do. And when I said that, her whole demeanor changed. She took a breath, and she said, what do you need? I'll do anything. And I said, that's what I need. That's all I need. I need you to care enough to be willing to do anything. I need you to be my mom, and I need to be a daughter. I need you to know what kind of car I drive, what kind of food I like. I need you to just know me. And I need you to love me. And I need you to take this pressure off of me to perform. I can't keep doing it. If I don't want to answer the phone, I don't want to have to, and I don't want to be punished for it. This has been a long road for me, and I need to do it my way. I don't know if that was right, but that's what I said. And she said, I'll do it. I'll show you. And I said, we'll see. Because I'd heard it before. I'd heard it for years. I was very skeptical. But I went home and I started gradually talking on the phone with my parents. And I started noticing such a difference in my mom. Her personality started coming out. I didn't even feel like I knew her. I started seeing this personality come out. There was this ease in talking to her. Dare I say, I enjoyed it. I'd never enjoyed talking to my mom. It's like from 7th grade to then, it was all chaos. And all of a sudden, I'm enjoying talking to my mom. And sometimes I would say, I gotta go. And she'd say, okay, talk to you later. And that was it. I'm like, that's it? No strings attached, that's all? That was too easy. And then another conversation and another conversation, and it just kept getting better. There was a lightness about her. So about 6 months into this, we invited them to our home. And the next morning, they spent the night. The next morning, she and I were sitting in the living room. Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember sitting in my living room with me? We started talking. She starts telling me all about her childhood, things I never knew. She had even told my kids, talked to them the night before about her drug addiction, telling them why they don't need to do drugs. And I'm like, whoa, okay, we never had that conversation. So many things started unfolding. She started talking about her addiction. And I started crying. And she said, why are you crying? I said, I've lost so many years with you, but at the same time, I'm so happy. And she said, we got all the time in the world. It ain't over. I'm like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. This is so weird. And I said to her, why are you so different? And she, without missing a beat, said, because I finally decided to quit living in shame. She said, shame has even kept me from getting clean. I could get clean for a minute, but the shame of everything I had done would send me right back to drugs every time. I never could break free from it until you stopped talking to me. And she said, thank you for the boundary. What? And this is how I knew she was different. I knew it. And let me just tell you tonight, shame is a thief. Shame has stolen decades from my family. Not drugs, shame. My mother has been under shame from things she didn't even do, things that were done to her in her childhood that she medicated for. And then that started that whole train of shame, another shame train for things that she had done. So much of this was eating her alive until she stopped and said, I'm done. And guess what? I love this part. She didn't do it for me. She did it in spite of me. She did it knowing there was a possibility that she would never have a relationship with me again, that I would never speak to her again. She did it for her. She didn't do it to get a response. She didn't do it to manipulate. She did it because she was ready. She was sick to death of living the way she had been living. She was done. I'm going to tell you something else too. I have watched this woman answer more altar calls than you can shake a stick at. Get up, walk away, and do drugs that night. And so many times I've seen this my whole life. People go to the altar, they get up, they don't feel any different, and then they blame God for it. Let me tell you something though. God had already given her everything she needed to live a clean life. She just had to believe it. So you don't need an altar call tonight. We may have one. I don't know what's happening after this, and that's fine. You can be delivered in an altar call, but you don't have to have that. You can be sick to death of looking in your rearview mirror, and you can make a decision sitting in your little seat tonight. God is not a genie in a bottle. He has given us what we need. He has equipped us. We need support. We need help. We need CR. Yes, we do. But He has already given it to us. We have to do the work. I'm sorry. I'm still in therapy. I keep waiting for one of these people that put me in therapy to offer to pay for my therapy, and they never offer. Okay? They don't. You don't. But it's worth it. It's worth every dime I have spent. If you're sitting out there tonight, you're like, well, I don't have any support. Well, get some. Well, I don't have any friends. Well, get one. I don't care if you got to walk up to somebody and say, be my friend. Get a friend. Somebody in here will be your friend. Good night. But listen, you got to move. You got to do your work. I am so tired of watching people do more work on other people than they're willing to do on themselves. Do your work. It is not fun. It sucks. But it's worth it. It's worth every tear I have cried. It will be worth it for you. Stop looking back. Look ahead. And listen to me. If there is anything for you to take away tonight, it's this. It is never too late for you. It's not. Do it for you. Don't do it to get your wife back. Don't do it to have a relationship with your kids. Don't do it to get your husband back. Don't do it so you can look like you're doing it. Do it for you. Do it because you're sick to death of living in squalor. Get up, for goodness sake. We all got our crap. I've got mine. Ask my therapist. We all have it. You're not special. We all have stuff we have to get over and deal with. You can do it. I sound like a motivational speaker. If my 72-year-old mother can get up here and tell her story for the first time in her life, talk in front of people that she knows, that is hard. You can do it too. You don't have to get up here and give your testimony, but you can turn your life around. And listen to me, if you are a family member or somebody that is affected by any kind of addiction, any kind of abuse, anything, listen, you have permission to take care of yourself. You don't need my permission, but sometimes we just need permission. You have it. Take care of yourself. Go to therapy. Do what you got to do. Get help. Set a boundary if you need to. Set it with love. My boundary was not to punish my parents. It was so I could heal and breathe and think straight. It was for me. You don't set a boundary for somebody else. You set it for you. And if you need to do it, then do it. God loves you too. You matter. You matter just as much as the addict. That addict matters. So do you. If you are a fixer of broken people, cut that mess out. You can't fix folks. You can't. They got to want to fix themselves. You can help them. You can love them. You can support them. But you cannot fix them. We work so hard on it though, don't we? With good intention. We want the best for people. Well, you got to let them decide. We got to decide for ourselves what we want for ourselves. And remember the little people. Because little people grow up to be 40-something-year-old adults in therapy. So ask those kids that are running around that altar acting like everything's great, do you need anything? What do you need? Maybe they're not old enough to know. Well, you know what? Chase them down when they're in their 20s. Chase them down like Doreen Jones does to me in my 30s. You okay? What do you need? What do you need? Be that for somebody. I needed it. Be that. And lastly, I just want to say this. Nothing is wasted. Nothing. I don't care if you've done drugs for 40 years. I don't care if you've cheated on your wife for 40 years. I don't care. Nothing is wasted. But we got to get humble. We got to be willing to lay it all out there. And it's ugly, man. It is ugly. But we all have ugly. Everybody. All of us. But it's okay. Throw it out there and be rid of it. And God will use it. You got to be willing to suffer the consequences in order to reap the benefits. I don't know if I made that up. That sounded so good. You should write that down. Really. But be willing. My mom was so willing to not have a relationship with me. She was so patient with me. You got to be willing to let the people that have been hurt be hurt. Let people be hurt. Let people have feelings. We're human. And it's okay. God will use it. Nothing is wasted. And let me tell you this. I have prayed. If you told me a few years ago that I would be standing on a stage with my mother giving a testimony, I would have told you were a lunatic. I mean it. I've been like, no thanks. I have prayed my whole life that God would not let me be anything like my mother. And now I hope I'm just like her. Maybe not just like her, but very similar. Very, very similar. Because if that woman can pull herself up by her bootstraps and say, I'm done, no more, and get up here and tell all you people that she don't know about it, knowing you can judge her next Sunday, that's who I'd like to be. I'm going to tell you right now. So, that concludes this comedy hour. Thank you for letting me share. I don't know if that was too much, not enough, I don't know. But I'm really grateful for everything that this place has done for my family. I'm grateful for the friends of my mother who love her and have scooped her up and who have loved on my dad. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for freedom. And I'm grateful for the truth. I really am. It is so freeing to be able to just say it and be done. This is what I did. This is who I was, but this is not who I am anymore. That's all I got. Thanks.